When we think of wizards in Middle-earth, most of us immediately picture Gandalf the Grey or Saruman the White. Perhaps even Radagast the Brown comes to mind, but there were actually 5 wizards who sailed from the Undying Lands to Middle-earth. And today, we're going to unravel the mystery of the 2 who ventured into the East, never to return to the lands we know from the Lord of the Rings. The Blue Wizards. To truly understand the Blue Wizards, we must first journey back to Valinor, the Undying Lands in the far west. In the hierarchy of Tolkien's universe, the Valar were the greatest powers beneath Eru Ilúvatar, the One. Serving beneath the Valar were the Maiar, immortal spirits of lesser power, but still immense wisdom and ability. Among these, Maiar were those who would become the most influential figures in Middle-earth's history, not only the wizards but also Sauron himself, who began as a Maia of Ul, and even Melian, who would later become Queen of Doriath and Mother to Lúthien. The Blue Wizards, in their original forms as Maiar, served in the halls of Orome, the great rider and hunter of the Valar. This connection is crucial to understanding their later mission. Orome was the only one of the Valar who had frequently journeyed into the dark lands of Middle-earth during the years of the trees, when Melkor's shadow lay heavy upon the world. He alone among the Valar had first-hand knowledge of the eastern regions and the peoples who dwelled there. In the year 1000 of the Third Age, the Valar convened a great council in the Ring of Doom. The shadow of Sauron was growing once more in Middle-earth, though few yet recognized it. The Valar, having learned harsh lessons from their direct interventions in the First Age, interventions that had quite literally reshaped the world, chose a subtler approach. They would send emissaries, clothed in the bodies of elderly men, with powers veiled and hidden beneath humble appearances. The selection of these emissaries, the Istari, as they would be known in Quenya, was a matter of great deliberation. Each was chosen for specific qualities and purposes. Kurumo, who would become Saruman, was chosen for his deep knowledge of the crafts and powers of both Sauron and the Valar. He was considered the most learned in the ways of their ancient enemy. Olorin, later known as Gandalf, was selected despite his own reluctance, chosen for his wisdom and most importantly, his deep love and understanding of the children of Ilúvatar. Iwandil, who would be called Radagast, was chosen at the urging of Yavanna, the Valar associated with all growing things. And then there were the Blue Wizards. In Tolkien's earlier writings, they were named Alatar and Palando. Alatar was specifically chosen by Orome, likely due to his knowledge of the far lands of Middle-earth. Alatar then requested to bring Palando as his companion, suggesting a deep friendship or connection between these spirits that would prove important in their later mission. The transformation from Maiar to Istari was no simple disguise. The Valar bound these mighty spirits to elderly human forms, not just in appearance but in actual fact. They would experience weariness, hunger, fear, and all the other limitations of the children of Ilúvatar. This was by design, to better understand and help those they were sent to guide, they needed to share in their experiences and limitations. The arrival of the Istari in Middle-earth was staggered, though all came sometime around the year 1000 of the Third Age. They came by ship across the Great Ocean, appearing first at the Grey Havens. This first landing is significant, as Círdan possessed the gift of foresight and immediately recognized their true nature and importance. While we know that Círdan gave Gandalf the Ring of Fire, Narya, recognizing in him the greatest spirit and the one most likely to resist corruption, we can only speculate about his interactions with the Blue Wizards. Did he see their future path? Did he offer them any gifts or counsel for their journey east? These questions remain unanswered, adding to the mystery surrounding these enigmatic figures. The Blue Wizards' journey took them through lands that barely appear on the maps we know. They passed through Rhovanion, the great woods of Greenwood the Great, later known as Mirkwood, and into the vast territories of Rhûn, but they didn't stop there. They continued ever eastward, into Khand and the land beyond, regions that had developed far from the influence of elves and Númenóreans. Tolkien's conception of the Blue Wizards underwent significant changes throughout his life, giving us multiple versions of their story to consider. This evolution of their tale offers fascinating insights into Tolkien's growing understanding of their role in the broader mythology. In his earlier writings found in Unfinished Tales, they are named Alatar and Palando, and their mission is portrayed somewhat grimly. Like Saruman, they were thought to have fallen from their purpose, possibly setting themselves up as magical lords or cult leaders in the East. This version reflects a darker view of the East in general, suggesting that all who ventured there were eventually corrupted by Sauron's influence. However, Tolkien's later writings, particularly in The Peoples of Middle-earth, present a dramatically different version. Here they are named Morinetar and Romestamo, meaning Darkness Slayer and East Helper, respectively. These names alone suggest a more positive outcome to their mission. In this version, their work was crucial in preventing Sauron from dominating the East completely. This evolution in Tolkien's thinking reflects a deeper understanding of the complexity of their mission. The East wasn't simply a dark land under Sauron's sway. It was a vast region, with its own cultures, traditions, and resistance to evil. The Blue Wizard's role wasn't to impose Western values or power structures, but to help these peoples resist Sauron in their own ways. The Blue Wizards' approach to their mission likely differs significantly from their Western counterparts, adapted to the unique challenges and opportunities of the Eastern lands. While Gandalf worked by inspiring and counseling the great leaders of the West, and Saruman studied the enemy's craft from his tower, the Blue Wizards appear to have taken a more grassroots approach. In Tolkien's later writings, he suggests they established secret resistance movements and magical traditions among the Eastern peoples. These weren't simply military organizations, but rather complex networks of knowledge, power, and opposition to Sauron's influence. Their methods likely included several key strategies. First, they would have identified and gathered those who showed natural resistance to Sauron's influence. These individuals might have demonstrated particular strength of will, wisdom, or magical aptitude. The Blue Wizards would have created networks of these allies, similar to how the Dunedain operated in the West, secret protectors and guardians working in the shadows. Second, they established schools or orders of magic and wisdom. This wouldn't have been like the grand libraries of Gondor or the hidden valleys of the elves, but rather secret traditions passed down through generations. They would have taught those who would listen about the true nature of the world, the dangers Sauron represented, and ways to resist his influence. These teachings might have taken many forms. Martial arts that incorporated spiritual disciplines, meditation techniques that strengthened the will against darkness, secret languages and symbols for communication between resistance groups, healing arts that countered the corruption of Sauron's influence, astronomical knowledge that helped predict important events, craft techniques that incorporated subtle powers against evil. Third, they worked to disrupt Sauron's networks of power and influence. This wasn't just about military opposition. It involved undermining his cult of personality, exposing his lies, and providing alternatives to his promises of power. The true impact of their work becomes apparent when we consider the War of the Ring. While Sauron did receive considerable forces from the east, these were far less than what he potentially could have gathered had he maintained complete dominion over these regions. Tolkien specifically credits the Blue Wizards with preventing Sauron from overwhelming the West through sheer numbers. Consider the vast territories and populations of the East. The known world of Middle-earth, as shown in The Lord of the Rings, represents only a small portion of the continent. The eastern regions were vast, containing numerous kingdoms, empires, and peoples. Had Sauron maintained unchallenged control over these regions, he could have fielded armies many times larger than what we see in The Lord of the Rings. The Blue Wizards' influence might have manifested in several ways: direct resistance movements that tied up Sauron's forces, diplomatic efforts that prevented some eastern realms from allying with him, economic disruption that limited his ability to support larger armies, intelligence networks that provided warning of his movements, spiritual and magical resistance that weakened his control over these regions. The influence of the Blue Wizards likely extended far beyond military matters. Just as the elves of the West preserved knowledge and wisdom from the elder days, the blue wizards might have established similar traditions in the East. These could have taken many forms. Mystery cults and secret societies would have preserved ancient wisdom and resistance to evil. These organizations might have appeared to outsiders as simple philosophical or religious groups, but contained deeper truths and powers passed down through generations. Sacred traditions might have been established that, while different from Western lore, still contained truth and power against darkness. These could have included ritual dances that maintained harmony with the natural world, calligraphy that contained hidden meanings and power, martial arts that combined physical discipline with spiritual growth, meditation techniques that strengthened the will against corruption, healing practices that countered the shadow's influence, astronomical observations that tracked important patterns, musical traditions that preserved ancient knowledge in song. Their influence might also be seen in the architecture and artifacts of Eastern cultures, just as the Númenóreans left their mark on the societies they influenced. The blue wizards might have inspired distinct styles of building, art, or craft that incorporated subtle powers against evil. This could have included gardens designed to promote clarity of thought and resistance to darkness, buildings oriented to capture specific celestial alignments, symbols and patterns that subtly weakened evil influences, craft techniques that imbued objects with protective properties, musical instruments designed for specific spiritual purposes, defensive structures that incorporated both physical and metaphysical protection. Looking at the different paths taken by the 5 wizards offers fascinating insights into their characters and choices. Gandalf remained constantly active in the West, working closely with all peoples and races, never settling in one place. His approach was one of inspiration and guidance, kindling hope and courage in others. He became known as the Grey Pilgrim, forever wandering and helping where needed. His resistance to using direct power and focus on inspiring others proved crucial to his success. Saruman settled in Isengard, focusing on study and accumulation of knowledge and power. His desire to dominate and control proved his undoing. He became obsessed with Ringlor and the crafts of the enemy, eventually falling to the very corruption he was sent to fight against. His tale serves as a warning about the dangers of pride and the desire for power. Radagast became increasingly focused on animals and nature, withdrawing from the affairs of elves and men. While he didn't fall to evil, he did stray from his original purpose. His story raises interesting questions about the nature of duty and whether his love for the natural world was truly a deviation from his mission or simply a different interpretation of it. The Blue Wizards chose a different path entirely. They ventured into unknown lands, worked among unfamiliar peoples, and operated largely in secret. Their story suggests that sometimes the most important work happens far from the spotlight of history. They maintained their partnership throughout their mission, perhaps helping each other resist the corruption that claimed Saruman. The contrast between these approaches reveals much about the nature of power and resistance to evil in Tolkien's world. Direct power as sought by Saruman leads to corruption. Subtle influence as practiced by Gandalf can inspire great change. Connection with nature, as chosen by Radagast, offers both insights and limitations. Secret resistance, as implemented by the Blue Wizards, can undermine evil's influence. Partnership and friendship, as maintained by the Blue Wizards, provide strength against darkness. The final fate of the Blue Wizards remains one of Middle-earth's greatest mysteries. Several possibilities exist. They might have succeeded in their mission and, like Gandalf, returned to the Undying Lands after Sauron's fall. This would align with Tolkien's later writings suggesting their success. Perhaps they departed quietly, their work in the East complete, leaving behind networks of resistance and wisdom that would continue without them. They could have fallen, like Saruman, becoming corrupt lords or false gods in distant lands. This was suggested in Tolkien's earlier writings but seems less likely given his later revisions. However, the temptation to use their power directly rather than subtly would have been strong, especially in regions far from the oversight of the White Council. Perhaps they simply faded from memory, choosing to remain in the East as teachers and guides even after Sauron's defeat. Their wisdom and power might have gradually diminished, like the elves who remained in Middle-earth after the Third Age. In this scenario, they might have continued their work of teaching and guiding, but in an increasingly subtle way, as the Age of Men dawned. Or maybe they founded orders or traditions that continued long after they departed, their true identity forgotten, but their influence living on in ancient customs and beliefs. This would mirror how the influence of the elves continued in Middle-earth, even as they departed for the West. These possibilities raise intriguing questions. Did they achieve immortality in legend, living on in the stories and traditions of Eastern peoples? Did they eventually return west, or do their spirits still wander in the East? Did they leave behind the artifacts of power, similar to the rings of power in the West? Are there still secret societies in the East that preserve their teachings? The story of the Blue Wizards reminds us of several important themes in Tolkien's work. Not all crucial battles are fought in the spotlight. While the fate of Middle-earth seemed to turn on events in the West, equally important work was being done in distant lands. This reflects a truth about how change often happens, not through grand gestures and epic battles alone, but through patient, persistent effort in the shadows. The fight against evil requires many different approaches. While Gandalf worked openly with the great and the humble alike, the Blue Wizards operated in secret, building resistance through stealth and subtlety. This diversity of methods suggests that no single approach is sufficient to combat evil. It must be opposed on many fronts and in many ways. Sometimes the greatest deeds go unsung. The Blue Wizards might have saved countless lives and helped ensure Sauron's defeat, yet their names are barely remembered, even in legend. This reflects Tolkien's belief in the importance of doing what is right, regardless of recognition or reward. Their story also teaches us about cultural exchange and understanding. The Blue Wizards had to learn to work within entirely different cultural contexts, adapting their methods while maintaining their purpose. This suggests that wisdom and truth can take many forms, and that different cultures might find their own unique ways to resist evil. The tale of the Blue Wizards continues to captivate us precisely because so much remains unknown. They represent the vastness of Middle-earth beyond the familiar stories, reminding us that there are always more mysteries to explore in Tolkien's world. What do you think happened to the Blue Wizards? Did they succeed in their mission, or did they fail like Saruman? What kinds of magic and wisdom might they have taught in those distant lands? Share your theories in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these mysterious characters. And if you enjoyed diving deep into Middle-earth lore, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We have many more fascinating stories from Tolkien's world to explore together. Until next time, may your past be green and golden,